Hey everybody, this is Ryan from the future. We go through a lot of stuff in this episode, and so there's a couple things that I just wanted to make sure that we clear up just to, for information. So the first thing that we wanted to touch on was aphasia. You're going to hear this a lot, and we wanted to make sure that you know that it is solely a loss of language and it's not a loss of intellect or mental capabilities. And the second thing that we wanted to touch on was that when we're looking at speech therapy treatment, first, it's always going to be evidence-based practice before you move into any sort of improvisation. So treatment follows what research has shown to be effective, which I feel like you all might have assumed that as you listen to this episode. Very similar to how we look at training is you have to understand the concepts and you have to go with what the science tells you first. And then once you have that, then you can actually have a little bit more fun with it, have some more improv, play games, etc. So that way you can actually teach people what you're trying to get at. So just a couple of things to want to make sure that we touched on. So enjoy the episode. Let's get into it. So it's all about like the position of your tongue and in your mouth will change how you can like make a note. So like you can bend notes in the same way that you bend a guitar, like you bend a good string on a guitar. And so when you do it, you drop if you're making like a g sound, you drop the back of your tongue down as you're inhaling, and it'll force the air to like bend over the reed, and it'll go on like a harmonica.
That's
that's
awesome.
That's fantastic. That's all about resonance in the mouth, like the oral cavity. Like you have your articulators, which are these little, your tongue, your soft palate, your hard palate, your velum, the little piece of tissue. The uvula is the hang ball.
The little dangly thing.
Yeah, that's the dongle. Then in between the space behind your nose or your nasal cavity and the space in your mouth, your oral cavity, you have this like piece of tissue, and it has to go down to make all your nasals, your N, M, and ng. It goes down. You can do this. You're gonna feel a little more air behind your nose. Yeah. And in order for those nasal sounds to occur, the velum, that piece of tissue, has to drop. And so the reason I bring up all these, the articulators all work together in your oral mechanism to mess with resonance, right? Which is what you're describing. And that's why your mouth is an instrument in and of itself. So that's really cool how like you even described, you're like, and the K and the G. Yeah, those are the velar sounds because the velum's down and the tongue is at the furthest point in the back. G. If you even make those sound, that was really hard. Sorry.
No, you're good.
You'll hear those like g. It's kind of fun. Sorry, this is my job. I play with this all day. Sometimes, especially if I get like really challenging new cases, which is fun. You don't want to be bored. I'll have to like repeat what the client is doing, and I'll be like, "What the hell is?"
You're like, "What noise are you making?" Haven't done that one in a while.
There was one who I actually had to refer her to an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat specialist. Because everything was happening like this, like she was nothing but vowelizations, just vowels. And
was this Sarah Silverman?
Don't you dare talk about her. She's a national treasure. Put respect on that goddamn name.
Sorry.
And she's fucking Matt Damon. No, this kiddo, that piece of tissue that separates the nasal cavity, oral cavity, like it wasn't coming back up. So everything was nasalized. And I think she's going to need some kind of
surgery.
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
Surgery.
Yeah, because
surgery.
Yeah, speech therapy can only get you so far. But if you're like working with physical differences, you can't compensate much. Well, I mean, I've had a lot of kiddos who newly develop a lateral lisp, so the air is on the side of the mouth as opposed to the tongue thrust lisp. The lateral lisp commonly occurs after kiddos get braces because they're still figuring out how to do it, or if they have a really severe underbite naturally. So part of me is like, well, let's just see what the braces do. But yeah, it's really crazy how just like messing around with your facial structure and these different disorders or things concomitant to it will like create new sounds.
I remember. Did you ever have braces?
As an adult, yes.
Did you ever have braces?
Straight teeth all day, baby.
Okay,
Nice.
calm down. We get
Born
it.
and raised.
All
That's
natural.
straight.
Let's
That's
go.
That's straight teeth elite.
Let's go.
I remember when I got braces. Because it fucks up how you talk.
Yep.
And
I
I remember sitting in my room at night, like saying the alphabet,
Oh.
like over and over and over again, like, and just like,
A, B.
but just like talking out, right? Because like your tongue doesn't like move well. I also remember, sorry, Mom, here's a new thing you're gonna learn about me as well, is when I got my tongue pierced. Same thing, like my tongue swells up, I can't talk.
Yeah.
And so I remember like both of these, when I got my tongue pierced, I was like, oh, I could do the thing that I did when I got braces, which was just like continuously say the alphabet to like teach my mouth how to like say words again and letters again and make sounds.
Yeah.
Because it would always come off like super stupid.
Do you still have the tongue piercing?
No, I took it out.
Oh, how funny.
I took it out when I cracked like 3 molars.
Oh.
Because I bit it. And I was like, I'm done with this.
Oh.
Delicious.
So thankfully they weren't bad enough that they've ever required surgery.
Yeah.
Or not surgery, but like
Removal?
like dental care or anything like that. So I didn't have to get like fillings or caps or anything like that.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm done with that.
Do you guys, speaking of teeth, do you guys still have your wisdoms?
Nope.
I took them out at 14.
Nice.
Of all things to develop on a young lady, those came in first. I had to get them out real early.
Still good for you. I got mine out 2 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, that shit sucked.
That was my first experience with anesthesia,
Yeah.
and I did not react well.
Mine was the shoulder.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You didn't get anesthesia?
No, I did with the shoulder.
No, with your wisdom teeth?
No.
Seriously? They
I got the numbing shots.
the Novocaine?
Mm-hmm.
Were
of
yours impacted?
Yes.
And they didn't?
Nope.
I had to be put out. Like, I had to go to I had to do like surgery
No.
to get them taken out.
Well, so my uncle's my dentist, and
Oh.
he hooks it up. So
Oh, good to know, because I actually need to go to the dentist.
yeah, so he hooks it up,
notes.
right? So like I only had to pay for the shots, like the Novocaine shots or the numbing shots.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was a 4-hour process because like he got through him and his son, my cousin, they work at the same dental practice. They got through the left side, and I was sitting there like all numbed up, and they're like, "How you feeling?" I was like, "I can't feel shit," and they're like, "We might as well just do the right because you're here. Like that way they're all out of the way." He's like, "It's gonna suck for a week, but you don't have to come back." And I was like, "I don't feel a goddamn thing. Let's do it."
Let's go.
Oh.
That was a fucking terrible idea. My whole mouth hurt. On one of the sides, the blood clot, like I rinsed too early, so the blood clot came loose and gave way.
Oh no.
And so like I had like that wind tunnel into my gum, and so
And
it
you
was
were just like
so painful. So
Oh, and you were bruised chipmunk, probably eating mashed potatoes and mac and cheese and.
I don't even. I think I had oatmeal and eggs for a week.
Oh, you were healthy.
Yeah.
That's good. Look
Oatmeal
at
and
you.
eggs for a week.
Oh my God. Sorry. Speaking of mouthing, especially when you brought up braces. So I didn't get braces until I could afford to do it myself, which was till my mid 20s. And it happened to be when I was in grad school for speech pathology.
Oh.
Fuck. A part of the adjustment. So braces are not just for straightening the teeth. They're also for like correcting the mandible and mandible, your lower jaw, maxilla, your upper jaw. I had like a slight deviation where they were a little off. Very, very slight. Like a person couldn't tell like, who's this hick? But you know, the dentist could. So
you were literally a slack-jawed yokel.
Cletus is my middle name. No, I kid. But so part of that correction process, was having fucking rubber bands going from one angle to another.
Yeah.
So I had a rubber band on the top left tooth, number 10, to the bottom right, and I also had a tiny triangle on the right. So I could not. I fucking show up for my orientation for grad school, and I can't speak. I'm like, hi, like, because
They're like, say your name. You're like, I can't.
I'm Rebecca. It's such a pleasure to be here. Like, it was just weird. I was modifying all kinds of things.
So you were Kanye West, essentially. Had your jaw wired shut. and-
I actually like lost a lot of weight inadvertently throughout that process, but it was great because by the time I got to externship with my first client, we both had braces. It was me and this little 8-year-old boy.
Nice.
And so
You and Tommy. You were one.
I actually, Rulian, he was the cutest, and he was Korean, and he would go, Rebecca, do you know Korea? And I'm like, Korean? No, I don't. He's like, Korea. Get that?
You're saying it wrong.
Wrong emphasis, kiddo. But
That's how they say it there.
Korea.
That's probably how his dad taught him. In Korea.
Probably.
That's how they say
I
it.
feel like you're pushing, like you're getting into like questionable Japanese territory.
Well, maybe.
Korea.
I mean, I used to deal with them both, so.
No.
Korea.
But to go back to the like quick on the anesthesia thing.
Yeah.
So I got mine taken out in, I think I was high school. I was somewhere in high school.
I should have done it back then. Fuck.
And well, I had to. So what was happening was I had braces, did like the retainers post that, but my both of them were impacted on both top and bottom, and so they were coming in at an angle, and so my bottom teeth are crowded again because of it. But so I went in like in the morning, got set up or whatever, and the last thing I remember the doctor saying, he's like, "Here's your cocktail," and I'm already kind of like loopy from the oxygen. And in my head, I go, I'm not old enough to have a cocktail. That's
cute.
That's where it ends. Then I wake, like, you know how sometimes in like horror movies where people will be like they're freaking out or whatever, and they like wake up, but they wake up like violently sitting up. So that happened to me.
Oh, you shot up.
So I like shot up because I like just straight awake in my parents' house on a couch, and it's like nighttime.
Oh, so you made it home at least.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I made it home. I went in at like 8 a.m. Now it's like 5 p.m. and I am just coming to consciousness.
Wow.
So I was out all day.
Yeah.
Whoa.
All day.
Well, your conscience was out all day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The text messages that I was sending to people were hilarious because I guess I was like just all messed up in the car, like texting people. And I looking at the message, and it was like, it's like as if you closed your eyes and were pressing 3 fingers on the keypad.
Yeah.
And then eventually hit enter. So a bunch of my friends enjoyed it. But anyway, I shot up super confused because I was like, where am I? What time is it? Like I'm coming in from Jumanji, like, what year is it? And same. So like I'm freaking out. And because of like me, like straight up having a panic attack, I was like hyperventilating, crying because I couldn't completely realize what was happening. Like run to the bathroom. My mouth is filled with gauze. And I'm like spit the gauze out because I was like, what is in my mouth? And then I'm like bleeding.
Oh
just,
my
like,
God.
violently from my mouth. And my mom comes in and she's just like, it's okay, you're home. Like as she's like stifling laughter because I'm having a goddamn panic attack. And I finally like come to and I'm like, what is happening? And that was my first experience with anesthesia.
God.
Kids don't do drugs.
Yeah,
Kids don't do
Lesson.
anesthesia.
Jeez.
Or oxygen.
Or apparently oxygen.
Yeah.
Whatever. I have something funny about oxygen, but that's besides the point.
Well, according to Fight Club, it gets you high.
It gets you high. True. It definitely does. First, let's introduce the show.
Oh,
'cause
okay.
We haven't
Sorry.
even started it.
Sorry.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
So,
Ryan, who do we have with us today?
So we have a very good friend of ours, Miss Becca Perez.
Woo.
So that's the voice you heard earlier. So both of us, we know Becca from like the gym space, and we were talking. So her and I were talking a little while ago, and she brought up the concept of like, if she could come on the show, and I was like, hell yeah, that'd be awesome. So I'll let Becca explain what she is, and if you haven't kind of guessed it already at this point, are you even paying attention?
Yeah.
So Becca, what do you do?
All right. Well, first off, thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure.
Totally just invited myself. I was like, hey, Ryan.
You definitely did.
I want to hang out. You want to talk about some shit? Let's do it. So they're actually doing me a favor because I'm going to be speaking on a panel about my profession in a couple weeks.
It's good practice.
Yeah. So I am a speech and language pathologist. I've been practicing for 8 years. And what that means is, on a general note, is that I help people, specifically in my scope, children, who have communication disorders. And that communication disorders can encompass a lot of different areas. A speech and language pathologist has a very large scope from which they start and then later specialize. So the first everybody probably thinks of is articulation, speech. You think of the Looney Tunes. They all have some kind of weird speech impediment.
Taz.
Daffy.
Succotash. Yeah.
Daffy.
I taught. Putty Cat.
Oh,
Elmer
Sylvester.
Fudd.
Elmer Fudd.
Yeah.
Foghorn Leghorn stutters, I believe. Well, I'll say yes.
I think that's just some Kentucky.
Does he stutter? Oh yeah.
I say.
I say. That's right.
Both of you remember the exact same thing.
Yeah. That's because that's like it's his
It's
phrase.
iconic.
Yeah. Elmer Fudd. He doesn't have his R's, I believe. What does
Yeah.
he say though? Hunting wabbits.
Yeah,
there we
wabbits.
go. Wabbits. Yeah.
Or
So.
like Porky Pig. Porky Pig stutters.
Porky Pig is a
Yeah,
huge stutter.
Oh, that's pretty
Yeah.
bad. Petit. That's all. Yeah. Oh, pobrecito. Okay. Well,
Tweety Bird.
I thought. Yeah, he doesn't have this S's. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the most simplistic way, right, to approach the speech aspect, right? It's just articulation, pronunciation. Pronunciation. How things sound, not necessarily the structure, composition, syntactic element, that kind of a thing.
Oh, taking me way back to early English. Syntax.
Early English. No, it's not even that way. It's more like when you have a kiddo with a language disorder, that's something a little bit different. That can encompass some like grammatical things, but language disorders, and I'll go into that a little bit later, but also is much more prevalent with adults post-stroke. Yeah. But just trying to finish up all the communication disorders stuff. It's articulation, language, voice, fluency, pragmatics, and swallowing disorders. Also related more so to adults, but can relate to the child population. So to break that down, any questions so far? I see you looking at me like.
No, just listening intently.
Okay. I was like intently. So when you have referring to my notes, hold on.
She came far more prepared than we did.
Way more.
Well, I just
She brought a whole book.
get it. It's a tiny book.
It's
Whole
a
book.
huge book. It's like
There's
as thick as Webster's.
Yeah, I mean that's like a J.R.R. Tolkien type of.
Yeah. All
Got
three
Lord of the
series
Rings.
in one book.
Oh
It's
my
wild.
lord.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are at least working together and making me look like an epic nerd. The point of this is, it's because an SLP can work in so many different realms. And that's usually the part that's surprising to everybody. Most people hear the speech thing and you think you sound funny. You tell kids, copy me, say pig, yay. But no. Aside from schools, you have private practices. Hospitals is one of the most interesting realms. To be honest, actually, that's where I wanted to start working off right out of grad school. But the nearest place that had availability for hiring was all the way in Bakersfield, and I wasn't about to move at that point in time.
Why is not Bakersfield? Why is Bakersfield so interesting? to
Because
you?
it's a hick town. Oh.
No, like why are hospitals the? If I'm jumping ahead, stop me.
Oh no, go! I'm
But
all
like,
for the question.
But yeah, like why are hospitals like the? What
So,
made you interested in that?
because I really liked the traumatic brain injury population. So, also within the speech path scope is you work with people with any lesion, infarct, seizure, some issue with the brain. It might very likely affect your temporal lobe or your prefrontal cortex, areas that impact language. So within a hospital, that's totally within our realm to address. So we can be doing cognitive therapy with an individual who had a stroke or traumatic brain injury. Example. So a client with a traumatic brain injury all of a sudden would no longer be oriented to where they were. Their memory was affected. They couldn't even recall like the medicines that they had to take on a daily basis. Their attention span could have been so short-lived that all of a sudden they're having a conversation and they forgot where they were necessarily going with it. So given that impacts communication, I was really into that. I liked working with adults for the counseling aspect, because one thing, you're having to deal with the idea of like, this thing I used to do so naturally and didn't think about, all of a sudden it's work. So I have a background in counseling as well. My undergrad is in psychology, and so that's an added thing, but and not necessarily relevant to all SLPs, speech-language pathologist.
Yeah.
But,
You can speak in shorthand at this point. It's fine.
oh, okay. I just wanted to be sure, because sometimes I listen to you guys and I'm like, what the fuck did Ryan say? But then I'll pick it up off of context.
Oh, good to
So-
note. Thank you for that random feedback.
Do we really shorthand things?
I think so. We probably do.
You do? Well, yeah, because you're so innately like CrossFit and fitness, and
Oh,
we
that's
know all
true.
this shit. And then
I think because like when we like converse, it's just
We also sometimes speak in a little code. So that way-
I'm speaking a lot of code.
Yeah, it's true.
he's all 143. I love you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've sent that to you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Super
and then he's like, "What is that?" And I sent him the song.
What song?
The song 143.
It's an actual.
It's
Yeah.
an actual. That's where to get it from.
Oh, you have to show me that. I thought it was just a phone thing. I don't know. Well,
I mean, it is, but it's also a
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
learn something new every day.
That's what we're here for.
Oh yeah. So I'll try and not worry about the shorthand as much then, unless you
Yeah.
ask.
No, just go with it. Yeah.
Okay. So
We were talking about hospitals, cognitive
you.
issues.
yeah. So I liked the idea that you could work with like cognitive therapy as well. I get to do a little bit of counseling aspect because I love the human connection. It's like a big part of the fulfillment for me. So I liked that with the adult population, the traumatic brain injury aspect, because I could see a very, very functional way I was helping on the day-to-day. Also within hospitals, you can assist people who've had strokes. Commonly after a stroke, if it affects a region of the brain that involves language, you have something called an aphasia. So working with people with aphasias is really fucking cool. It's like you're playing a weird taboo game. Like, so
Wait, aphasia or naphasia?
aphasia, Aphasia.
Is that I'm commonly referred to as like brain fog? Or what is it? I
So
thought there was something like after people have strokes, they have like brain fog. Or,
I could see that if you're related to like language specifically.
yeah,
so-
like for my grandmother, like they
Oh.
like she. I mean, she hasn't had one in a while, but I remember when she had it, she like her speech started to slur, or she would like forget words, like simple words.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like this. There's one element of it, like the tip of the tongue phenomena, where you are thinking of a word, and it could be like a common word, like cup, right? And you're just excuse my language. Your brain just won't.
You can swear. It's okay.
Okay.
It's our fucking show. You're right.
Yeah. You do whatever you want.
It's our fucking shit. Fuck. No.
That's
okay.
right.
But like maybe I'm trying to refer to the cup, and I'm like, hey Eric, can you help me out? Can you grab that? And it's there, and it's very, and I might even talk around it. I'll use all kinds of words. I'll be like, it's like a receptacle for like
water holding
drinks
apparatus.
and liquid.
Fucking
Yeah,
thing that I drink from.
it can be, and it can be quite impressive the way you talk around it.
Yeah.
This circumlocution, if you will. But it's so frustrating for the poor individual because you're like, fuck, I had this word. So that's what that's called an anomic moment where you're like, ugh. And so that's one of the more mild aphasias where it's just like, oh, I can't remember this one word. But then there's something called like a semantic aphasia. So semantics, word meanings, right? You might commonly like argue with a friend, but you're arguing semantics. You're not even on the right definition there. And that's easily fixable, right? But so semantically, let's think like categorically, we form little categories in our brains, and that's how we learn words, right? We learn a new word and we stick it in this other category. So let's pretend we're talking about things in the house, furniture. There was one client who there was a lot of frustration because she had a lot of semantic aphasias. She would get mad at her daughter and say like, Heather, I really go open the door. It's really effing hot. Open the door. And then Heather would go and open the door, and she'd be like, why didn't you open the door? Like I told you. But she actually meant window, right? So semantically, we're kind of in the same realm, but that was really frustrating. So that's the thing with those types of aphasias. It can get pretty complicated where you have one called Wernicke's aphasia, where your speech, like your clarity is fantastic, but you're saying nonsense, and so actually the way I perceived the way he was going to the other room and then the drawer, and I was very curious about, but we're just like, what? I'm hearing words and the speech pronunciation, perfect, but the language is all
There's like just like a
muddled.
disconnect.
Basically every
Yeah.
episode we've ever done.
Largely. It's like one of those like a decoder thing where like they like in their mind they hear a perfect sentence that they're saying, but then it comes out and they're like, yeah, the apples are tables and we're gonna go to the moon and fly rocks.
Yeah, exactly. It's very like, oh my God, it's a little heartbreaking, but you're like, well, if I can help you connect, if I can help you feel better for that little bit, if we can find some compensatory strategies, like hell yeah, this is great.
Let's rock.
So yeah, that externship experience in grad school made it such that I was like, this is what I want to do. But yeah, opportunity was not there. And not at the moment, or not then. And then by that time, I started working in the schools, and another opportunity didn't come until I was like 3 years in. And I'm going to be honest, by that point, I was like, oh, I love working for the school district. Like, summer's off. I don't have to take vacations because they just tell me to take them. And yeah, I went that right. But I love working with children. There's still that opportunity for fulfillment and working on other aspects that are also very, vitally important.
What are some exercises you would do for the last one you were just talking about?
The aphasic clients?
Yeah.
Oh, that becomes fun because you have to work with the individual who's in front of you. So you like assess the severity of it, right? And ideally, I would shoot for oral expressive strategies. Like, so let's say they couldn't think of something, or, they were like really struggling with words. We'd kind of do a language lesson and like visualize it. So maybe I'd like have categories of things in their household, and it'd be like, okay, well, where does this go? Like, we might physically manipulate these items if they start to struggle in a session, right? That's what I want. I want to see you struggle in that moment so I can start building you back up. We might immediately start delivering cues to the point where they become successful. So at first, maybe I'll deliver a phonemic cue, a phoneme, a sound, right? So if in this particular exercise, she's struggling with the word door, for example, right? I'll be like, okay, duh. Let's see. And they have to try to work it out on their own. We want that brain processing and figuring this out. If that's not working, I might get half of it. I might write part of the word. So really the idea is like with all of those therapies is the first instruction that makes you kind of feel like a little bit of a teacher, right? With lots of visual aids. And we base the actual material we use on the client's goals. Like, so if they're like, I'm having the biggest problems at home communicating with my family. Okay, well, let's see the kind of language you're going to need at home. Things related to kitchen, the requests, things you visualize, things that are special to them, right? Maybe they have a home gym. I don't know. So we take that and we put that all in this session, and then we just start practicing communicating, and then we see what works. And we just kind of go down our list of it. So there's a little bit of like an improvisation to it, because I don't know what's going to work for you. Like, yeah, I could have worked with many clients with aphasia or post-stroke or whatever, but not everybody's going to present the same. So it's just about finding what works and then translating those exercises to the family. So that way it's being worked on all the time. There's also there's a little sad element because we're speaking specifically about this post-stroke. Research has shown like you're going to make your largest amount of progress in that first year, and then you pretty much plateau. Unfortunately, you can still do like rehab and maintenance things and make sure you don't regress. But ideally, like, so if they're under a year, I'd be like, let's go every day, right now, all the time. I want your brain tired, So yeah, that's the kind of stuff. Visual cues, tactile cues, lots very visually dependent. So we like to have like a lot of stuff we're bringing out. And tailor it to the individual in front of us. Just get to see what's important to them in their daily life.
That's interesting because it's like that's very similar to coaching, right? Like we have, if we're talking about say like teaching somebody a squat, regardless of wherever they're at, like their training age, we have like a toolbox of here's a bunch of cues that we can use. Here's we have like a framework of what we want, but then each individual is going to learn stuff differently, right? And you kind of talked about some of the aspects of like visual, tactile, and we also use like auditory, and go through the various steps to see like it's kind of throwing stuff out there until we find the thing that works. And even though like it might work with like the next 10 people that you see, like number 11 could be a wild card, and you're like, well, can't use any of those things that I was just using. So I find that very interesting that like even that same, just like that same concept, right? When it comes to like dealing with people or dealing with, I guess, medical stuff to a certain degree as well, that the rule applies in other professions, which I don't normally hear about. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Right. Well, like, sorry, there's like two things I can say off
go
of that.
for it.
But no, well, first, like, I think that's why I respect both of you so much. I've had both of you at coaches at one point, and I loved you both because you pay attention to the individual. Eric was one of the first ones that was like, well, you have long femurs or legs. I don't know that part of anatomy. But he's like,
Hell
so
yes.
you should squat differently. And I was like, what? Oh my God. You mean it's not always the same perfunctory? I'm looking for this checklist. So that's what I liked and appreciated about both of you right off the bat. It's a development of judgment. And I'm sorry, you cannot teach that. Like, I'm sure you both went through like your certain classes and you learned the like standards that people are looking for. Okay, cool. But then you also adapted that and looked at the person in front of you. And that takes a talent. I feel like there are some people like that are just not cut out for professions like that, where you have to think and adapt in the moment.
Wildly agree with you.
It's all so crazy. Do you ever like, so I have to point out with this whole SLP thing, right? It sounds like, okay, like kind of cool and kind of professional, but like sometimes you just feel like a fraud. Like with anything, because this profession in general, like it's only started since the 1940s. It's so new. It's such a baby. You know what I mean? Like 18th century, there was in the UK, it was like called elocution, right? And it's speech perfection. That wasn't even about disordered speech and language. That all kind of came up later. And in fact, it's only started becoming a thing in the 1940s because people came back from World War II, like suffering from TBI and stuff like that with their aphasias, with their language issues. And then kind of SLP really took off from there. They developed an institution like I don't remember what it was called then, but now we are the American Speech Hearing Association for the nation. But also, who cares? Like, I don't know, you know? So it's kind of crazy to think about that, like, you know, these things that we hold in high regard, or, you know, even like some of these professions, like we're just making it up.
You know, that, you know, from your perspective, yeah, it sounds like you have a fair argument for that, but from like ours, especially when I mentioned earlier, like if you want to think on fraud level, animal therapists. That just happened within the last 10 years, and people are like scoring degrees or certificates, and people are going, like, celebrities are paying X amount of dollars, be like, my goldfish is sad. Okay, cool. Give me $1,000 an hour and I will make your goldfish happy.
I feel like that's really a bullshit niche thing.
I agree.
Like, I don't think that's a huge
It's
thing.
not yet, but there are a lot of celebrities like looking for pet therapists. Like my sister was like, what do you think about me being a pet therapist? And I was like, that's not a real thing.
Well, I mean, there's certain aspects, like with the trainer that I worked with. I mean, there's behaviors, right? There's like general behaviors that we can assume, like, and certain characteristics of like a dog, for example, for this instance, right, where they're like they're oh, fuck, what's the word? My aphasia's kicking in.
He's having an anomic moment.
There's certain like postures and positions that a dog will like get into that will signal certain like emotions and feelings.
Agreed.
Right. And so you like one of the first things that we had to learn when we were training Aries was like how to read these signs and react to them before he has like the trigger to fully react as well.
Example.
So one of the things that we noticed with him so there's kind of two things. One, it was the ears would like, I mean, he's already got pointy ears, but they would kind of focus in on a certain direction, as well as his gaze would lock into a certain direction. And it would be to a point, and most of it was like in the early days was like other dogs. Like he had a rough, no joke, no pun intended. Like he had a rough time with like other dog aggression, not in the sense of like that he would like charge and attack, but he like would just get himself worked up. And so we had to be cognizant of watching him, so that way when we started to notice that he would get effectively this like tunnel vision of like another dog or something that he would get affixed to, we had to be able to kind of pop him out of it and then redirect that attention back into us. So that way, whenever it was like starting to kind of train him into thinking that whenever he would get into these like these positions that he would then turn to us as the like essentially the authority to be like good or bad. And so that was like just one example. And so you can almost like you can see his postures change. And you can kind of see the demeanor of him change as a whole. And that was like the signaling of like, hey, something's about to like happen with him.
Well, that makes sense because that sounds more like animal training, and you're looking for very specific things. But if I'm interpreting you correctly, animal therapy, you're talking about mood.
I'm talking about like if a dog looks sad, they're gonna take their dog to therapy so that the therapist can talk to the dog.
For sure. I understand. I understand that part, but I just want to make a little bit of a distinction in that. Like, there's aspects to.
There's a difference between like the behavioral training and my dog's sad. Please fix him. Like,
Have you seen Best in Show?
I have not.
No.
Oh, okay. So dang it. Watch it. It's kind of dry. It's a much older movie, but like basically it's a dog show, right? And it shows like the various types of funny personalities that like live, breathe, and die their dog.
Yeah.
And they actually do take their dog to therapy, and he's like on this little Freudian type couch, and he's just like, oh, and they're like, we're just so worried about him. And
see, real thing.
funny.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I just wanted to make sure that there is also a note that it's not all fraudulent, that there is aspects to that concept that are worthwhile to look into.
What about dog chakras and doggy sound baths?
Here I feel like the sound bath thing has to be fucking torture.
I would agree. Like, there's just the vibration and the pitch in that's just like,
well,
The
frequency for the dogs is just like, I don't want to hear this. Like,
one, it's loud.
Yeah.
Right. It's louder. Plus, we also have like dogs who have like severely heightened levels of hearing comparatively to us, both on like lower and higher frequencies, i.e., dog whistles.
Yeah.
And so, like that, I feel like there's no way of that not being torturous. Assuming that to be true.
Yeah.
Poor babies.
Why wouldn't it be?
Why wouldn't it? I mean,
there's dog therapy.
We live in LA, so
every
stupid.
Possible.
It's one of those like, I feel like LA is the city. LA and the internet are synonymous when we say if you can think of it, it exists on the internet, as well as if you can think of it, it exists in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like anything and everything, because I've seen some wild stuff. So back to you. So what is like? I'm assuming you reference going to school. So like, what does school like is like like SLP? Is that something that you would like every school kind of offers, or is that kind of like select schools offer?
Good question.
Like, what does that look like? Education.
It's not offered in every school. So what you'd be looking for is a major in communication disorders. I didn't even know it was a thing until like after the fact. Like I had mentioned, I had already got my degree in psych. I was pursuing something else, and then not to get too into it, but like the psych route, I didn't want to do it anymore because to make a more comfortable living, you'd have to go get a doctorate, and I was not about that research life. So I was like, how else can I like help people? And also, I didn't like the idea of the psych route. Like, there's no way to kind of quantify that. Like, how many times did you smile a day? I helped you. Haha. Like you can't, it's really hard to measure. Just like dog therapy. He licked me more, so I thought about speech therapy because my brother had a speech therapist when he was much younger. And that's like an easy thing, right? You can see there was a behavior that was there before and it's not. So in order to do that, I had to go back. But so you get going back to your question.
Yeah.
So you get the degree in communication disorders. So I had to go back to undergrad and do some extra coursework. And then after that, it's a master's program for 2 years. Depending on the school you go to, though, it's either a Master of Arts or a Master of Sciences. So because the communication disorders major is for speech and language pathologists as well as audiologists. So the dudes who test your ears, because, they're so innately tied. We produce what we hear. In fact, any referral I ever get for a speech concern, the first thing I have them do is like, have you had a hearing screening recently? Because that can be a whole other thing. I had a kid who was referred for S's, but guess what? S is like one of the, it's on a much, much higher frequency than all the other speech sounds. So the kid couldn't hear it. You can't hear it. You can't make it. Silly.
Sorry to cut you off, but
no,
is that similar to like people who have hearing disorders generally have Like generally you'll hear they have like a distinct way of speaking.
Yeah, you produce what you hear. There's a resonance issue. Things kind of happen more in the back of the mouth, kind of a thing. I mean, that can be worked on so that way you're not relying on the audio feedback. You're now relying on like the tactile feel.
Yeah.
Right. So that's actually what I had to do for a kiddo who did get referred to S, but they couldn't get a hearing aid until later. So I had them like working towards that constriction of air in the front of the mouth. Like, did you feel it? The tickle on the tongue, or whatever meaningful cue she gave it. So yeah. So to answer your question, yes, yeah.
Real quick, what's the most difficult letter, and what's the easiest letter?
Oh my God, great question. I hate R. I hate R so much. It's the worst. R. Well, because there's so many. There's your consonant R, like rabbit, Rebecca, rocket in the initial position, and then there's all your vocalic R variations. So a vowel with an R, teach R, your pirate sound. So we tell the kids, let me hear your pirate sound.
Your pirate sounds.
Yeah, there's so many childish things I'm used to saying on the day-to-day. Like, I don't forget till I'm with adults again. I'm like, you're weird as fuck.
That was one of the first things I think when I first met you back at the other gym was one of those. I was like, she says a lot of weird kid things. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I think you called me. I was very playful. It makes my day super fun, but then I got to be careful because I'm like super playful, and then I like translate that over to adult interactions, and then I become either weird or a flirt, and I'm like, nah, that's not any. I'm just strange.
I think half of our lifting sessions was you explaining to me like how children say things when they have like speech problems, and you would do all the things, like all the training words, and just like, okay, like now let's do the lift.
I know, you were so.
And now we'll work out.
Yeah. You were so patient. I miss those. That was so much fun, actually. And he was like, "You were the only lifter I know that doesn't sit down between your sets."
Yes.
Because I would just blah, 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 blah.
Just stand there, talk, walk around, talk, go back to the bar, lift, talk.
Do you see? This was also my way, though, of like, relating to adults, like remembering how to do it. The good time.
At the time, no. She's like, oh man, she just had a long day with kids.
Yeah. It has its really positive aspects too. But so ers, those are the hardest because R is one of the later developing sounds. So if I get a referral for like a 5-year-old and he says teacher, I'm like, that's totally fine. Talk to me a little bit later. Or they're like, it's really funny the way people will describe me. He's like, from Boston, like park the car and Harvard Yard. Like, and I'm like, is he from there? No. Okay. Well, let's just, if he's not 7, don't talk to me right now. But yeah. So R is hard because of the tongue tension, and then there's like a retroflexion. So the tongue goes up and points to the back. And a lot of kids don't know how to tense quite yet. They don't have that. So like, it just kind of stays there. And you're both doing that. And then the easiest are my the sounds that happen at the front of your mouth. Bilabials B, P, and M, because they happen right there. You can provide an immediate visual cue. I can even provide a tactile cue. Get a gloved hand and pop it. Oh, sorry, that was really
God
loud.
damn.
Sorry for your ears.
Sorry, listeners. You are now awake.
Tinnitus.
Exactly.
Okay.
I feel like I didn't finish.
No, it's okay.
Question. Oh,
welcome to our episode. Welcome to our episode.
Yeah.
It's a
we just
consistent
trail
like this.
off and then come back.
And then hopefully come back.
Yeah.
More often than I feel like we forget.
Okay, wait. So you said you hated R's. Mm-hmm. What was the easy one?
Oh, PBM.
PBM.
The bilabial sounds. Because also K's and G's are kind of fun because it happens in the back, so it's more challenging. Yeah. Because you can't show the child anymore.
Yeah.
But the things that have worked for kids make me laugh. Like sometimes I just, it's called your back or your mouth sound. So like touch the back, and sometimes just that tactile cue, their own hand near them will help, or will pretend. Part of it also too is if in their mind K is t. So for the back of the mouth sound, they're always producing. It's usually a T or a D that they're doing instead. So if I say make the K sound, their brain has now ingrained t and d as identifying that, right? So then we have to use like an imagery thing. So then I stopped talking about speech sounds, and I'm like, let's just play, like, and I'll get 2 cars and make them crash. Let me hear you do that. And I'm like, ha, we got it. It's distorted as fuck, but we got it.
We got it.
And then we can shape it from there. So that's why that one's kind of fun, because I've gotten success with car crashes, make your velociraptor sound. we have to come back from there, but the fact of the matter is, like, we elicited it at one point.
They're
right?
getting a foundation. They're
Exactly. They're like, oh, I've never used that, or velociraptor that, or even just a cough. It's because it's kind of happening back there. So that's why it's fun just to see the weird things they do, because I like to try, as we're trying to just elicit this thing they've never done, I'm asking them to form their own words, right? So they come up with their own cues, because then later when I try to recall it, it's more meaningful for them, right? If just like with coaching, right? You're like, how does that feel with that? You want them to begin to eventually become independent, have it happen on their own, self-monitor. That's when you really got it.
You really got it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I find this shit so interesting. Like,
you look interested.
I am. I don't know where to go from here.
I have another letter. Well, like a letter combination, right? How do you distinguish between the K sound and the C sound?
Oh, you're hilarious. Well, that's just an issue of reading, and
that's all it is.
So C, yeah. Well, when I teach C, when we do the sounds A, A, B, B, C, K, or S, right? We're not relating it to reading necessarily. That they just have to memorize. Kind of a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, because it's kind of the same sound.
Yeah.
Right. It's just
so. I guess at that point, it's just more visual learning.
Yeah, because see, you are a strong reader, and of course you're thinking about that, but the kids don't know that, right? They don't yet relate the grapheme, just the letter, the way it looks on the paper, to the phoneme, to the sound. So with the really young ones who have not yet even done that yet, it kind of works. It works for me because I'm like, oh, great. You don't have that issue of the incorrect sound paired with the letter yet because you didn't even memorize it.
Didn't even know it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's advantageous.
Nice.
I
read good.
I read good. We speak good too.
Speaks good.
Speaks good.
I love your accents. I remember at lifting, he used to do. Can you do your British one still?
I can't. I can't do it anymore.
Oh, he can't.
I can't. I'm out of practice.
Out of.
What the hell?
He just said out of. Like,
Oh,
out of,
I did, but you
out
made
of
it
practice.
southern, like
I didn't make it.
Arkansas.
It's
Out
it's
of-
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
We have Kansas and Arkansas. Fucking deal with it, Arkansas people.
Wait, who's Kansas? Our Kansas?
It's our Kansas.
Kansas.
Okay.
I know,
Not their
not
Kansas.
our Kansas.
No, our Kansas?
It's not our Kansas.
It's our
It's
Kansas.
our Kansas.
But it's not ours.
It's not ours.
It's ours.
It's theirs.
Whose?
Arr. That's the pirate sound.
It's pirates. It's pirates. It's our Kansas. Everybody knows that pirates come from a landlocked state.
Yes.
Now I do.
Now you do too. I find this so interesting. Like, as I've said a million times and will continue to say, I am a whore for YouTube, and I consume far too much of it. And so every so often I'll find myself like there's a I don't know if he's if he's an SLP or not, but he's like a vocal coach, I guess, to a certain degree. Not in the singing sense, but like he generally works with like celebrities when people are trying to figure out how to do accents or I know he referenced before that he did some like clinical work as well.
Oh, okay.
And so he'll do these like breakdowns where he'll break down, like I probably watched every single one of them because I was like, this is so interesting. Because he'll break down like language and how like there's different like it's the phonetic alphabet, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So we have like the phonetic alphabet, which are effectively all of the sounds that can be made, at least from like the American English, like dialect. Is that the right word?
Phonemic inventory.
That one.
That one.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at.
Right. I
You
just-
knew.
It was on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah.
I was right there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You were going to get it.
yeah, it was my aphasia kicking in.
Yeah.
So so he was like, he would talk about that, but then he'll also go into like other accents like around the world, which I find so interesting.
He could do them, or he was.
Oh, he can definitely do that.
Wow,
It's crazy.
That's impressive.
But he would break down more, not so much like the actual sounds, which he would do, but also break down like how it works within, like it's a lesson as well, kind of like all the stuff that you're explaining right now, Becca, which is but explaining all that stuff that you're talking about now. And so he would like explain it. So like, how there's different sounds that could be made from, the like a East Asian language or like an African language or more like some of the English speaking ones, like, in like Scotland, for example, right? Where there's like very different like mouth sensations, which is also part of the reason, correct me if I'm wrong, why like certain languages are hard for people to learn. Because the mouth movement that you have to make is foreign to us. So like, to give an example, which we were talking about earlier, I'm continuing my practice to like learn it, like, build back my Italian. And so there's like certain notes or not notes, but sounds that you have to make like specifically to Italian that I've never made in English. Right. So like there's a GLI, and I always mess it up. And if anyone's Italian listening to this, sorry. But it's like a y sound, which is, and I know I didn't do it right, but like you don't make that sound in English. And so it's super hard to like try and string a sentence together and then throw in this random like tongue movement that I've never done before.
I would have said glee. Like the way you spelled GLI, I was like, glee. That's all
Yeah,
glee.
It's very different from what I expected.
Yeah. Right. Or like, I mean, both of you have like Spanish. And so like, trilling R's, you don't do that in English. So like, it was all a struggle for me to try and learn how I can like, nice and easy.
There you go.
Oh, I can do it now.
Oh.
I can do it now, but like when I was trying to learn, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, right? Or I would have to like pause and like lick my lips and go,
That's very
right?
That's really good.
wow.
Yeah.
That's actually really good from saying like you learned it as an adult?
Yeah.
That's even more
that's impressive.
impressive. Yeah.
Well, again, I'm a fucking weirdo. So like, in all these like random things that I'll learn something.
You're a weirdo, but you put into practice what you want to learn. So like learning your R's, you will like, you're a guy who likes to practice it to perfection.
Oh, I want to do it right.
Yeah.
Respect.
100%. But like to go back into like, I need to start like making notes about like the weird shit that I do on my own.
Just
Because
walk around with a camera all day.
I'm not a vlogger. I don't need that.
I'll watch it.
I don't need that stress in my
I'll
life.
just watch it. Just
Real
film
life
it for
of
me.
But like just like the weird shit that will run through my head. And so like that's part of it, like where I would hear these things, and I wish I did a little bit more like prep for this so I could bring some of this up because I would have been fun. But it was but I would like sit there and like try and make these sounds. And like I would try and do like accents along with like these videos that I'm watching and just being like, man, that's really wild that people can learn how to do this.
Right? If you don't get the sorry.
No, cut me off.
If you don't get the cut me off, that's fine. If you don't get those sounds in the formative years of your life, they're very hard to develop. So the fact that you're like, oh, I got the trilled R as an adult, that's amazing. I've seen people, and then for a lot of non-English speakers, that voiceless th, the like I think. Nobody has it. That's very exclusive to English. So that's going to be a common error in a lot of other languages. It's not in Spanish. It's not in Tagalog. It's not in a lot of the Chinese tonal languages. So that's also important to know. Like if assessing, like, oh, something sounds weird. No, that just sounds natural to, the language. And also very important to consider if you are trying to like mimic an accent, like with the vocal coach that you were referring to. It's fascinating because it's just about learning what speech sounds exist in which realm. And like, it's not even thought about in the field as like specific sounds. We put them in classes. All the back of them, all the velar sounds, all the sounds that are made in this manner, all the sounds that are made with a narrow constriction of air, a stopping at the glottis, and then all the fricative, like they all have their own names. So when you think about it like that, it's easier because you can think this language doesn't have this class of sounds and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's how your vocal coach does it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was so wild. And then like, because then they also brought up at one point, I don't remember, they were talking about something, but like talking about the phonetics, there's like the boxes, right? Where it'll again, once
I'm so impressed you looked at this. I'm like, oh, that's like what we learn at school. Yeah.
Well, yeah. When I find again, this is the weird shit, right? So like, if you would look up my internet
This is 3 hours of YouTube already.
If you would like look into my internet history at any like random given point, you'd be like, what is he getting himself into? So
at this point, the FBI is like, this guy's not.
They're like, it's not worth it.
Yeah,
Just throw him on.
There's too many things.
So they brought up the the phonetic, like this box thing. And so one of the parts of it was how you can break down all of the different tongue positions as well as the sounds that you can make in, any given language. And so the other part that I thought was really interesting is they were talking about essentially impossible sounds, right? So like a TK together can't be done because the back of the tongue blocks the air and the tip blocks the air to make like a k sound.
Right.
And then a T sound also does the exact same thing. So you can't do a TK together. Right. So I was like my mind is exploding at the moment where I'm like, oh my God, that's a thing that exists.
Were you trying it after you read?
Oh yeah. And I'm like,
He's all, I'll show them.
but you can't, because what'll inevitably happen is a K sound.
Yeah.
Right.
You get the last of it and you're like, well,
Yeah.
there it is.
They're
Right.
not happening in succession. It's one behind the other.
Yeah. Right. Whereas for like the thing that comes to the top of my head is like a TS sound you can do. Right. Like, tss, right. So that there are like random combinations that can exist, but there are things that cannot, like physically cannot be said.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is wild. And then as an aside, again, this is why I say interrupt me, because I'll rant. But then they were talking about how they would use these, when people are like making up languages. So they would be able to use these like different, like the phonetic, like squares and like the library of sounds to like create different tones that would then be, randomly associated with words, like how Klingon was created, or like
Elvish.
Valerian or Elvish.
Yeah.
Those are real?
They're made up. So like people actually sat down and created the language
Oh,
for for Star Trek, for Lord of the Rings, for Game of Thrones. They sat down and created a language, and like the words have meaning. Like everything they say actually has.
Yeah. So
it's a language. It's a developed language.
So
Yeah.
especially in like more, I mean, it tends to be more like the sci-fi realm that you're going to find things like that. So like, we've all watched Game of Thrones. You've seen Lord of the Rings. Seriously?
Star Trek?
Do you know Star Trek?
Oh, no. I'm
What
sorry.
the
That's not. Hey, whoa, calm down.
Okay, that's fine.
I saw the big Yoda thing.
The what?
The what?
No, I didn't. Okay, just kidding.
Just try and play that. It's not going
That didn't
to
work.
fly past us. Okay. Anyway, so for example, in Lord of the Rings, right?
I'm listening.
Elvish, right? Is a language, right? The language of elves. I forget what they're called. There's a term for the people that are able to do this. It might be just a linguist.
Nerds.
That too.
Nerds too.
Yeah, that too.
But that is a made up language, like a made up spoken language. And so it is a full language. Now there's certain things that like can't be said because either they just didn't make it, but like there's an alphabet, there's like a phonetics to it, and how you can create words and like all that. So like, for example, like Eric was saying, so in Lord of the Rings, whenever you hear these people speaking like Elvish or like, I don't know, I'm blanking on any other languages, but like, or
Ant, the trees.
like, Ent, right? Or Ents, they're the big walking tree things.
She never saw it, so it doesn't.
It's
can't-
fine. But I'm
I
just
believe it.
explaining it.
I can picture a walking tree.
Can you?
Horrifying.
Grandma Willow, but with legs.
Yeah, pretty much. Right? They're good. They're neutral good,
They're
I
neutral.
believe.
Yeah.
So taking me back to my D&D days. But then also, as a side, if anyone listening wants to play Dungeons and Dragons, I'd be very down. I need a group, please. Anyway, I love Dungeons and Dragons, so good. But then like going into like Game of Thrones, like there's Valerian, there's High Valerian, which is foreign languages that are legitimate languages that you can learn and exist.
Valerian, Dothraki.
Those are all real languages.
Yeah.
That is insane.
And they were created just for the show.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so all
Well,
of
from the
Respect.
book.
they were from the book.
From
yeah.
the book. And
But they needed like a spoken variation
yeah.
of it. And so, and that was like one of those videos from that vocal coach that was on YouTube. He broke down Dothraki and like how it works and kind of where the influence comes from in real languages and like where you can find it. So these like more similar to like a what would it be? Kind of almost like a like Eastern Bloc like language, kind of a Slavic language.
Dothraki?
Yeah. As well. Well, so like
I
there's
feel like it has like hard K's and
so in the sense that there's like certain mouth tones that
Yeah,
you're gonna,
okay, yeah.
or mouth positions you're going to find that are going to be like more Slavic, as well as I forget where else they said, where it's kind of got this like real guttural back of the throat, like hard, like
Those tend to sound angry.
yeah, right.
German, Korean, Japanese. An old Japanese dude.
Well,
They all just sound angry.
What about minion? Do you know minion is?
So Minion is a composition of 3 languages.
Tell me.
I
know you.
So I think it's Spanish, Tagalog,
Italian.
Italian.
Yeah, you can learn from the minion. And whenever they give anybody something like para ti,
Yeah.
para ti, that's for you.
I don't remember.
Well, you should.
You've never
watch
seen
the
what is it called?
Despicable
Yeah,
Me.
Despicable Me.
I've seen Despicable Me, but I never really
You don't
paid
know what
much
the-
attention to like.
what
I
the
know
minion
I
is?
know what it
It's
is.
a little yellow guy.
They're so
I know. I
cute.
just said I know what
And
it
they
is.
love
They're really cute. They
bananas.
wear suspenders.
Yeah. No, I find them.
Banana?
I find them annoying.
What?
What?
I know. Fun fact: I know the person who did like the marketing that effectively made Minions blow up in the
Raquel?
way that they did.
They're the most important
Yeah.
person on the planet.
No names.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't do names here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like,
Yeah, but yes, yeah.
oh, I was like, she's nice. Okay,
Yeah,
no
it's
names
fine.
though. Sorry.
More so, it's just not.
Yeah, we just try to protect.
No, that protect, respect.
Yeah.
I get it. My bad. I
You
don't know
protect-
the
protect your
podcast
neck.
etiquette.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But generally speaking, you want to avoid certain. You just want to like avoid things like names or stuff that you're talking about, just because you don't need. The internet's a weird place.
Yeah,
And
people are weird.
And people are weird.
Oh,
so.
true. Oh, yeah. I forget. Like, when this is fun talking to microphones, but yeah, a lot of people will hear this.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you just generally be a little bit more cautious about like how much you're sharing.
yeah.
Everything you said has been okay so far, so don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're good.
Lots of fucks though.
Lots of fucks.
Oh, the swearing part's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, there's a fuck ton of fucks.
But I think the point of that was you need to give a deeper appreciation for the minions.
Hey,
it's
that's-
so cute.
Yeah,
I find like random stuff like that annoying, like in movies and like it's just like the
they
random
have their own movie though.
the one I will never
Yes.
watch.
Oh
What about those birds in Finding Nemo?
Mine?
Mine.
That shit stuff like that is annoying to me, right? Because it's
how
like
how do you not find that comical?
how does I find that comical?
How do you not? Well, okay.
Because
so first of all, you and I have like the child capacity of a 12-year-old, and we laugh at penis whenever we see it. So like,
Yeah.
how do you not find a little yellow light bulb running around in blue suspenders hysterical?
The concept of them is funny to me. I understand that concept.
Yeah, but you don't find them individually funny.
But I find them annoying in the manner that they're used. So similar to like the birds, I'm like, okay, it's funny for about 3 seconds. Jinx.
You owe me soda.
And anything after that, I'm like, and I'm done with that. Move on.
Got
But at the same time, I understand that it's not for me. Like this is a kid's movie.
Got it.
So
you'll laugh at a fart, but if the fart's too long, you're like, all right, I'm done. Like
It's past 3
you
seconds.
gotta you gotta stop farting.
It depends. The farts
On the sound of the fart?
Farts depend.
Okay.
Farts are always funny.
all right.
Like unless you're a prude, they're always funny. And I will die on that sword. So come at
From
me,
the
bros.
gas or from the sword?
I'll pass out from the gas onto the sword.
Oh, good question.
Right?
We ask the hard hitting questions
All the
here.
visuals here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how it works.
Oh.
So
Wait, back to language, right? Since
Yeah.
we're still on the topic of like different language, I had a thought in my head. I like hearing most languages, and there's only what 3 like romance languages?
Oh,
Like 4? French, Italian,
Spanish
Spanish,
and Romanian.
and Romanian.
Yeah.
I didn't know that
nice.
one. Is it okay? Is it just me? Like, I don't appreciate the sound of Portuguese, and I don't know if that's because it just sounds weird to me. But I just the way they talk, the way they combine their letters and pronunciation of things, I'm just like,
They have a mouthful of marbles.
yes, I find it disgusting. Like I don't like the language.
Severe
Bro,
aversion.
be careful. We
Okay.
have Brazilian listeners.
I love Brazilian women.
Though I guess it depends.
But-
Portugal and Brazilian
It's
Portuguese is
a
little bit
different dialect. Yeah, it's a different dialect. I'm speaking more towards like Portuguese from Portugal. Like I've heard Brazilian Portuguese and it's smoother.
E aí.
It's smoother, right? It's but
Obrigado.
Portuguese
Obrigado. That's
is
what
just
it is.
like blah blah blah. And it's like I can't listen to it. I don't want to hear it. And then there's some parts of German that just sound angry, and I'm just like, why are you yelling at me? Like, I don't.
It might be a tone. So, I haven't been to Portugal for quite some time, and I don't really remember. I know. Okay, excuse
Oh,
me.
I've been to
That was,
Portugal.
I've been to Portugal. It was fun. Oops, yeah.
For quite
Okay,
some time.
I did things. It was years. Why are you, both of them are like shaking their head with sassy movements? Get out of here.
Just an easy, humble brag. It's fine.
Sassy. I'll take it. Whatever. But I don't recall the language well enough to say to think about the elements of it, but I'm thinking it must be something about the tone, especially when you brought up German, because that has like a lot of
It
harsh,
sounds harsh. Yeah.
a lot of sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I can hear the difference between German and Dutch. I can hear the difference between German and Austrian. Like German is just like angry. Even if they're smiling at you and speaking softly, there's like that subtle tone where like you're mad at me. I don't know why, but like I can hear it.
Because they really hit. They
Yeah.
hit those
They
sounds.
hit it.
Like there's a crisp pronunciation
Yeah.
there. Like, those are just like standards in that culture.
That's
that
got yeah.
I feel like. Go ahead.
Oh no, go for it.
I feel like it's kind of like what you were saying, right? With Becca, that the hard letters, and to think about English, like when we're really trying to like drive a point home, especially if we're angry, we really hit like the fuck you type of thing, right? We really like emphasize like the letters and kind of bring that emotion into it.
Imagine if we emphasize the wrong part of fuck.
Fuck.
Fuck you.
Yeah, like that.
That's more of a question. Like, fuck you?
I get yeah.
Well, that's more of an intonation thing as opposed to a sound, right?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Okay, that's a whole other thing, like the cadence and the prosody, like the kind of the sing song.
We're not Swedish.
Or even like tones, like I was working with a Chinese client on accent reduction. She wanted to sound more like American natural for work. But she only wanted to work on the sound production. Like, so she was so cool. She would like come in and bring newspapers and she'd highlight all these. She's like, how do you say that? I remember one time she brought in the word cannon and canyon.
Oh shit.
And she's like, I don't hear a difference. What's the difference? And that's crucial.
Yeah.
That being able to like produce the speech sounds. But the thing that really hindered us from progress was she did not want to work on the intonation, because Chinese is a tonal language. And I even had her teach me. I was like, yeah, let's talk about some of the things. I might be misremembering this, so I'm sorry. But she said a consonant vowel combination 3 different times. I think it was ma, right? She said, and to me, they sounded similar. It was like ma, 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 right? And she told me that one of them meant like horse and one of them meant like mother. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, if I couldn't hear it because I'm not a native Chinese speaker, I was like, that makes a huge difference in terms of conversing with someone. I was like, so that tonality definitely needs to be addressed. If your end goal is like a naturalness in a certain style, we've got to work on it. She'd be like, nah, it's cool. So we never got that far, but it was a lot of fun.
Like, I'm just gonna say cannon and canyon.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna get it either way.
I just want to hear that.
Yeah. I'm gonna hit you with a cannon.
Hey, do you want to go take a walk through the cannon?
I jumped on a cannon.
Or jumped into a cannon?
Oh, we jumped into a cannon.
Could both
That
be
one,
accurate.
yeah.
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
But real quick,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
going back into it was Francis being Francis. So, but going back to like the whole German thing, so I think where from an American side we hear the like heavy pronunciation or like emphasized pronunciation as like anger, right? Because that's how we would associate it. Whereas, and so I think when we hear like German, then that's the immediate response that we get is like, oh, it's an angry language
it.
because of that.
Yeah.
Intonation is the
Good
wrong word,
insight.
right? But it would just be the way that we
Process.
they inflect on certain aspects of the language.
Got it.
And so, and that reminds me a little bit. So there's a book that I read, which is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck,
I love that book.
which is a funny book.
I fucking love that book so much.
And I think it also goes into how to talk about like different cultures, and America has its own culture, whether you agree with it or not, but the way that we process and the way that we speak to each other. So there's a story in the book where he talks about how he went on a date with a Russian woman. And so one of the things that he was experiencing with her was that whenever like they went on a date and she would be like, I'm bored, let's go do something else. So that bluntness is very uncommon in in America in the way that we speak to each other. Most people are generally very polite, right? We're very cognizant of how we treat other people. And so we tend to beat around the bush and kind of be a little bit more vague in the way that we'll like express our disdain or discomfort or something that we don't like.
I must be kind of Russian then.
Right. To a certain degree. Don't sell yourself too short. But that bluntness is, and so when he was talking about it, he was thinking, he's like, oh, she doesn't like me. She doesn't like the things that I'm doing. But in reality, and I don't know if this to be true, this is purely anecdotal from one book that I read, but generally from that Russian standpoint, they're just telling you what they feel. And there's not necessarily an emotion prescribed to it. That's just, I'm bored. That's the state that she's in right now.
Yeah.
Or I don't like this, or that joke's not funny. Right. And so that, because it goes against culturally how we would speak to each other on an American side, then we would then ascribe an emotion and a response to it, and like assuming something based off of the way that she was speaking. And so I feel like in the same sense, like this is just to relate it back into, because in English we speak so specifically or emphasize so specifically when we're angry, then that's how we kind of then turn into hearing German as an angry language, whereas in reality it's not. It's to a certain degree tonal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we interpret it based on what we know and practice. No, that's a freaking fantastic point you bring up. It kind of like it's a very natural segue into another aspect covered by SLP.
Let's go.
It's probably actually this is like one of my favorites, especially working with kids. It's called pragmatics, which is social language, right? And so typically, this is addressed with children with autism. They can have strong expressive language skills in terms of I can retell you a story with all the major events in perfectly syntactically, grammatically correct sentences, sure. But in terms of having a conversation with a friend and understanding these subtle nuances, like I make eye contact with my friends and we take turns, and I don't like just one-sidedly tell you everything all the time, and I don't just walk away when I'm bored. That kind of thing. So a lot of kiddos with autism, they don't know these rules. Like, it's something as typically developing people, maybe we take for granted that, like, if you're in a conversation, we notice somebody starting to kind of like back up, like, oh, maybe we should transition. Like, or us, we never said we're all going to go downstairs right now. We all just kind of...
I just grabbed my backpack and I was like, let's go. And everyone got up and went.
You didn't say let's go, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, it's all these, we read each other's nonverbals. 55% of what we actually communicate is nonverbals. And so for our children with autism who can't read this well, like it's much more nuanced. They don't have friends. It affects socialization severely. Mm-hmm. And so that's another element we address in schools and therapy, the social things. And we have to straight out tell them, because they don't have that built in. I have kids who will be like, I don't want to talk about that thing. It's kind of boring. And I'm like, well, do you want him to listen to your Roblox game? He's like, oh yeah. And well, you have to listen to his thing. Oh man, his friendship sucks. Like they'd be like learning these
this kid.
rules is hard.
I also like this kid.
No, but so they're incredibly blunt. Again, not trying to be little jerks or anything, but just because everything is so black and white. Like I don't understand that I have to take turns and I have to be a good listener and how to be a good listener. Then there are other kids who are. We've been working for a while, and they're like, okay, miss, I know the rules. I'm making eye contact, but not creepy eye contact. We'll train him to like, look here, like look, so you're not so intense.
They're just
third
staring
eye.
right at it.
The mind chakra, if you will.
Yeah. And they're waiting and they're listening, and then they don't know how to keep the conversation going. So then we'll practice like asking appropriate type of questions. Cause then their thing is like, when it's their turn, they're like, oh fuck, it's my turn. And they're like, I like turkey sandwiches,
I like turtles.
It's so off, but it's so dang endearing. They're like, well, I'm trying, That's so much fun, because then we have to really we talk about language. I'm like, okay, well, I like the way, like, I have one kid, oh, he did so great. He comes in, he's like, hi, Miss Rebecca, how are you today? And I'm like, good job. I don't like that he calls me Rebecca, but that's because of the Zoom. I had to write my name as Rebecca Perez all year for other employees, and now I'm Miss Rebecca. But anyway, hi, Miss Rebecca. How are you doing today? And I'm like, oh my gosh, so I really liked the way that you greeted me. Like, thank you. It made me feel special. I'm doing well. How are you? Like, so we'll have to do that. I'll have to talk about what he did and how we did it. And then like Daniel, like, well, who cares? His mom's not gonna hear this. Like, I don't like the way, like, I can see in your glasses on your screen that you're looking at something else while we're talking, and that makes me, that's rude. And he's like, oh, okay, I didn't know.
Sorry, I'm just bored.
Yeah. So it's these funny things. That one's really fun to work on because it's just like, how do you break down that? So like, we'll have to just be real creative about the ways we do it. At one point I had like a group of children, and in order to practice that dynamic of taking turns and all that, like I gave them, like, everybody has like colored popsicle sticks, and like maybe the green ones were every time you made a comment, the red ones were every time you asked a question, and the blue ones were every time you initiated something new. And so they have to do it. And I said at this kid that all he would do is ask questions, like a little like interrogator.
Hell yeah.
And I'm like, look at your popsicles. You can't ask any more questions. Like, and he's like, I don't want to comment. They all have really inappropriate pitches, by the way. That's how I'm making it sound. I don't want to do this. But yeah, so that's pragmatic language. Yet another part of the day.
I feel like SLPs in this instance, like that practice specifically, could probably go very well in just teaching most adults how to converse in fucking conversation.
Yeah. Young adults, right? Like people who fucking stay with their faces on the text. Like people who don't like to talk on the phone anymore. It's just like I'm the kind of person who'll pick up the phone and call you.
Yeah.
Like I hate answering a text because it's like 30 text box later. It's like, I still haven't explained to you or emphasized what I want to explain to you. And it's like, just pick up the goddamn phone.
Right? That's what it was for initially. Yeah. Now it's a freaking camera and whatever. Maybe I sound old, but like, yeah, there's just severe degradation of like communication skills in general because people, they're not growing up conversing and hanging out outside and doing all this stuff. They're just like automatically there, linked to their...
It's the new babysitter, right? Like that's somewhere that happened in our generation where we were like, here, take this. I don't want to deal with you.
That's, yeah.
So, yeah.
It's sad.
Well, yes, I would agree with you. To a certain degree, as he looks down at his phone. No, I'm just kidding. You're fine.
Sorry, what I was paying attention to you.
Sorry, I'm bored by this conversation.
I don't like this. I'm going to move on.
I'm going to stare at your eyeball.
Well, my third eye. My whispering eye. So, but what I meant by that is in the sense of, I think for us, like Eric and I, we're a little bit lucky in the generally what our profession requires us to be as communicators. And so more often than not, I think people don't have the practice that it's required, and in the sense of not even just talking to a person, but talking to many a people.
Yeah.
Right. And being able to read someone's face, their body language, like kind of what you were saying earlier, Becca, and as well as just the like different personalities and how other people want to communicate and how can you mirror that and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so especially from like coaching, that's something that's like wildly important. Not just being able to give them, it's not just giving them the right cues or the right instructions, but it's also building a little bit of that connection, right? Personal training is personal for a reason. So what I mean by that, but then when I'm going back, I think a lot of people are severely out of practice in the sense of like how to do all of that stuff. And I think texting is definitely one of those aspects that have like depersonalized communications, because you can't read tone and intention through text unless you're gonna like, unless I caps fuck you, then like I'm angry. Yeah. Right. Like you have to caps letters, or you over describe, right, where you're writing out theses. Yeah. Whatever. Just like a long, lots of theses. Like you're just writing a paragraph to somebody to like express all of these things. Like you're something like classic writer. Or you're like CK who sends 3-word text boxes 30 times. Really gonna call her out like that? Oh yeah, 100%. Now that we're on the text thing.
I thought we weren't on names.
Oh, she's a fan of the show, friend of the show.
She's been on the show twice.
So yeah,
actually.
Yeah. I'll call her out all the time.
Sure.
Yeah. But she's another one who I cannot, like, very rarely will she pick up the phone and she'll just text me. And I'm like, like, and she's gonna make the excuse, right? We're gonna get it. She's, I'm at work. Watch, you'll see. But like, there's off hours where like 6 o'clock. I know you're not working. Fucking call me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to text you.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely a point for me where I'm just like, I can't.
Yeah.
Like, this is gonna take too long.
Yep.
Yeah.
Too many back and forths, because I know, like, you can almost immediately assume like this is the question you're gonna ask, and I'm gonna have to say this, and you're gonna ask this, and blah blah blah. And it's like a 15-second phone call would be so much better.
More efficient. Yeah.
So, sorry, was that it? Okay, sorry, I didn't want to like cut you off. So, but then the question that I'm curious about is, so now that we've had the pandemic, right? And well, technically still in it.
Yeah.
And so
No, we got released
well,
on the 15th.
for now, for now,
We're free.
bro, I'm so tempted. Like, I'm very tempted to like go out into the into the
earth?
water, into the war. I meant to say ether, but like go out into the world,
Yeah.
a little bit, because I haven't stopped communicating
Yeah.
this entire time. Even though it was through a lot of it was through Zoom in the very beginning stages, I was still seeing people to a certain degree, and then now I'm seeing people more and more and more, and so that whole aspect never stopped for me.
Yeah.
And I'm so intrigued to see how people like communicate after almost a year and some change of not having a whole bunch of like interpersonal communication. And I kind of want to be there just to watch the breakdown.
So
I'm so intrigued by it.
Speaking on that, I went to go get my prescription sunglasses today. I went for the appointment 2 weeks ago before everybody got released. I went in today. There's still people, like, there's older people with masks, and I was like, okay, I'll be respectful. I put my mask on. Like, I didn't have to, but I was just like, I don't want them to, be feared, just whatever. I threw it on. The dude at Lens Crafters, I mean, he's definitely an East Coaster, so, I mean, those guys don't stop talking. So this guy, like, we carried on a full-on conversation, same as when he did my appointment, and then same today. It's just like, I think that's an unfair one because we built up a rapport, like, from the first time to now, so we had that engagement already. But even so, like, just being able to have that conversation with a stranger and not, like, lose focus or kind of stray away from it, it felt really good to talk to somebody.
No.
But on the offhand, right, like, you try to talk to a random person that's in the way, or like you guys are both looking at glasses and they're like, oh yeah, they just like lean away from you. And then another thing is, like, after I picked up my sunglasses, I went to the driving range to practice and met this cool dude. We started talking about golf because he was watching me swing, and he was like, hey man, like, where did you learn? And, like, he didn't have a mask on, I didn't have a mask on. We were like
Making out.
we were this far apart and like totally comfortable. Totally.
Awesome.
And I felt really good about it. I was like, all right, cool. Like, we're having this conversation. The people behind me were like panicky. They're like, oh, they're 2 feet apart. Like, I don't know. It's just like, come on, like, get over this shit.
It's so nice that you're able to have that connection again. I feel like that's what everybody has been just craving.
Yeah.
Like, throughout this pandemic, though, it's been funny to see how conversations have naturally occurred, like in coffee shops or the few places you could be during those times.
Yeah.
I would start engaging in conversation with strangers all the time, and I didn't mean to. Very often, I didn't initiate it too. They would just start talking, and that, like, about this so and so item, because they were just so starved for it, and we're just so social.
That was me the other day too when I went to the Dodger game. Like, it's
fun.
fully packed again. So I sat shoulder to shoulder with this older dude, and we were just shooting the shit about baseball, like shoulder to shoulder. We were talking about how the Dodgers sucked the other day, how the players are old, how the umpires sucked, like. But we were just shooting the shit, like, here to here, and it felt so good. Like, the one thing I will say is the focus is now on the mouth because you haven't seen the mouth for a year. So you're just like looking at teeth.
Yo, what's that?
Yeah, you're like,
What is
I haven't
that?
seen those in a
I
while.
haven't seen the bottom of a
Yeah.
face in a while.
Like, so, like, I'm trying to look at your face or your eyeballs, but I just see teeth, and I'm like, fuck, I know this looks weird. I keep going like this. Like,
Oh, that's funny. Well, you know what? If that's the worst thing that happens, I think you're good, because
Yeah.
it sounds like you're not out of practice. It's good. We've also had people, like, when I went back to work, so the majority out of my work was Zoom this last year and a half, and I went back in person for the last 7 weeks. I was so drained. I mean, it was refreshing, but I was just also like, wow, this is a lot from what was happening before, and just being able to, like, and also I feel like with a lot of the students I work with, greetings and salutations, that's gone. Like just, and then, okay, bye.
Yeah.
They just closed the lid on me.
Yeah, you're like, all right, class is over, exit.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you need to learn how to. We're gonna have to work on
That's gonna be something that has to, introductions and exits.
And handshakes. What's gonna happen?
Oh, I shook a ton of people's hands over the last 2 days.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I wait for people to make the first move.
they initiated.
Yeah.
Right, and I felt comfortable enough to reach out. Like or today, like the guy I met at the range, I reached out and I was like, hey, dude, cool, like good to meet you. Like if you ever want to like go to the range or whatever, or hit me up. Like we exchange numbers and everything.
Aw,
So
good
we're gonna have a bro date.
Is he cute?
He's pretty cute.
Nice.
He's
jealous?
tall, tatted,
Little bit.
and dark. So
Tall,
just my
dark,
type.
and tatted.
Yeah, that's right.
The 3 T's that
Yeah.
the I like to call it the T triad.
Dark is with a T.
Yeah.
Tall,
Dark.
tall, dark, and,
Dark.
and they're both alveolar sounds.
Tall, dark, and
Trying to
and
help you
tatted.
out.
Tan. Tall,
Tall?
tan, and handsome.
Tall.
Tan. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
He's tart. What is that?
He's
Tall.
tart.
Tan and tatted.
Tall, tatted, tatted.
Look, I'm sorry. Trying here, okay? It's on the fly.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Going back, when you were talking about that text message culture, I just wanted to throw out, I thought it was an interesting study I'd read the other day about how in general people are no longer using periods because they are interpreting them as
Like hard stop.
yeah, like that there's a problem. They're using that simple punctuation that is just supposed to be the end of a declarative sentence, and they're attributing way more meaning than there should be. Like, oh shit, he's mad. He said okay with a period.
I feel like there's certain things within texting that like it is almost to a certain degree its own language. Right? There's kind of like there's nuance to the way that you text, and there's kind of ways that you would text to kind of create feelings or emotions or ascribe intention behind.
Well, that's why we have emojis.
Fuck that.
What?
I'm not an emoji person.
I'm all for the emojis.
Hard
I
pass.
just send happy faces at the end of everything, so you know I'm happy.
So, right, but I think, like, so for example, like, if you were to say okay, I generally wouldn't put a period at the end of okay because it's kind of, it's not really a full sentence. It's not really anything.
It's just a response.
It's just like a canned response, effectively. Similarly, talking about the culture of like texting in the same way that I feel like people will generally put LOL at the end of something or like a ha at the end of something.
That's like the new period.
Which is partially like the new period, but also it's a way to seem less serious when you are trying to make a more serious comment. So it's like, hey, Eric, I'm mad that suck that I didn't get to see you earlier today. Haha. Right. And so it kind of softens the blow.
I'd be like, that's your problem.
Yeah. Right. But
Exclamation point.
But to go back to the idea that we are, I mean, this also adds into the kind of that concept of, I think that we are more cautious and empathetic than I think more people are led to believe on because we're so cognizant of people's emotions.
Yeah.
So we try and like not deliver bad news in a harsh way.
That's fair. I feel like that. So with the group thread that I have for the gym, right? I send the text and then I look at it and I go, somebody's going to misinterpret this.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, it'll be like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, fuck. This shouldn't have had a follow-up question. I'm just making a statement of fact. Like, God damn it. So now, like, I think about it afterwards and I'll just put lol.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm just like, just so the tension is not there. Like, not that it's ever intended because I'm direct. I'm just like, is this? Are we doing it this way? I want this. It's like, oh, well, are you upset? No, like, no, I just making a declarative statement.
Right?
LOL.
Yeah.
Aha.
Right. And I think I think to a certain degree too, like when we look at texting, and I don't know if I'm the only person who does this, but like if I'm texting with you, I hear your voice as I'm reading through it.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with you, Eric. So like and that's also because I know
well, you
both
know
of
how
you.
they speak.
Yeah. So I have like something to pull from in my, my history of you guys to be like, oh, this is likely how they're going to say it because I know your personality relatively well. I would assume. All right. And so I can like read through that stuff. But for like a workplace thing, I know it's happened with me with like my boss where we've texted back and forth and then I'll get a call and he's like, hey, you okay? I'm like, oh, dude, yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just because there's just a little bit of like my like friend personality showed in like a normally where I have more of like a worker conversation type of like thing happening. And so he wasn't used to that. And so he was like, I don't know what you mean by that, because it's not normally the way that you would talk. Right. And so I've had to like adjust a little bit accordingly to be like, this is what I'm trying to get at.
Right. You're all, oh, sorry. I was deviating from formal Ryan. What I actually meant was.
Yeah, to a certain degree, right?
And that's a good note, right? Like, so like with each person, you have the way you speak to them is also very similar to the way you text them. Like,
yeah,
like with individuals, and like, I'll shoot the shit with you. I'll shoot the shit with you. I'll shoot the shit with Kat. Like, but it's the way I talk to you. It's not going to vary too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, another example is like my cousin and I, we're blunt with each other. Just that we're just direct, and we know what we want. Like, I never think he's mad at me. He never thinks I'm mad at him. But the other people we work with, they don't have that similar relationship. So like when I give them a direct statement, like I'll get a call. I'm like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm fine. Just take care of this. Like, are you mad? I'm like, no, this just needs to get done. Like I'm just letting you know this needs to get done now. And that's all it is. But they don't have that rapport that my cousin and I have built over the years. And we like, that's how we just talk to each other. We're direct. And it's like, we'll put in goofy shit when we want to be goofy. But if it's like statement, we know we're not mad at each other. Like, we just need to get this done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just being assertive and efficient. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, if you're texting, you don't have, your vocal tone, all these other like cues that they would get so that they actually know your intention. That's why, like you said, man, calls are just way easier.
Yeah.
I like using the phone for its primary purpose. To
phone people.
Yeah.
phone people. I miss my landline.
Hard pass.
Both
Yeah.
of you guys are like, what?
I'll stay away from that.
I'll
one.
keep the cell phone.
You don't
Yeah.
remember like back in the day when you were kids and like you just had one phone line? It's a rotary phone. There is a rotary phone in this room. Oh.
It's not connected.
It's not
right?
connected, but
Oh.
yeah.
Oh my God.
It's a thing that exists.
But I would love that would be, you'd check your little number, ting, and then like just kind of wait for it.
Yep. You have to wait, and then you push the wrong number. You got to start all the
You
way
have to hang
over.
up and do it again.
It taught you patience
Oh God.
and how to be careful.
Dexterity.
in your
Well,
execution.
that and
Oh,
also
yeah.
an actual phone book, or like a address book.
Oh yeah.
Right. We used to have something that was like on my fridge.
The
where I
yellow
could-
pages, the white
Well,
pages.
sorry, I didn't mean an actual phone book, but
Oh.
like
You
a
had-
personal
you had to
phone
store
book.
people's numbers
Yeah.
on paper.
Like I remember back in my
Did you have a Rolodex? Did your mom have a Rolodex?
we had a Rolodex for the business, not for just
Personal.
generally. But we did have like a notebook almost that was all like categorized by letters. Right? I'd be like, oh, I need to call like grandma. And it's like G. Pull it open and be like, that's here's the home number, here's the cell number. Like,
Wait, you kept grandma under G? Why not under her name? Like
Grandma was her name.
Grandma Mary.
because
I
It would still start with a G.
yeah, it's still grandma.
Like when you put Grandma Mary in your cell phone, it goes G, and
Yeah.
then
Oh, I guess I have a physical phone book as well, and I put it by the names. That's why.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so you put Grandma Mary in the M's. So she's later to get to.
you swear I just have to like fish back a few more.
So many pages.
But right, so but that was but no, we had that, but then we also had like a taped thing up on the wall, because then that's also where I would be able to be like, here's all my friends' numbers, so that way I can be like, oh, I need to call Mick or I need to call Esteban, and like here's the phone numbers, that way I can like hit him up. Can Esteban come over and play?
Yeah. Aw.
Right, or I have to do all that stuff.
Is your refrigerator running?
Yeah. Why?
Better go catch it. Click.
Got him. Got him.
Good old days.
But the one question, so you kind of brought it up about kind of now that you've gone back into like teaching students a little bit, like did you notice, I guess on the same topic, as you were going into more virtual training with all of your like, speech patients, I guess? Patients? Would patients be the appropriate word?
I would call clients or kiddos. I literally just kiddos.
Kiddos. All right. So for your kiddos,
Oh.
did you kind of notice a little bit of a degradation as you started to progress further into kind of the pandemic and online learning?
Yeah, unfortunately. It largely was impacted, I believe, by their home environments and their lack of access, though. I happen to work with kiddos in like Title I schools, like in impoverished communities, and a lot of these, like the communities that were hit a lot harder and like lost a lot of people. A lot of the clients I work with, they'd call out and they'd be like, "We lost someone," and it was so. They're not worried about speech. So in the first place, it was a matter of access. They just weren't showing up. Honestly, so when it hit March 2020, I maybe only had 3 kids on my caseload. And then my workload, it was just me logging how many contacts I made and sending home emails, mailing packets, just trying to access them. So we lost all of that time. And then when we finally did come back and people start accessing Zoom, the internet was shoddy, even though like the district I work for, I won't say that, provided like hotspots and whatnot for them to get access. There were people still as recently as a few months ago who still had spotty internet connection. And imagine me working with my kiddos. It was most frustrating with those turn-taking pragmatic language groups where I'd be like, I just keep saying their names. Dial, what do you think of? Da, 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 da. And there'd be a 40-second delay in it. So yes, severe degradation, but for the wrong reasons. It was just so infuriating to see them trying so hard, parents trying so hard, they're logging on with them. And then there's also like the families, the households, they don't have the luxury of an extra room. So I could see, I'm right there in the kitchen where I see the sibling on the computer, and there's tons of background noise. And these are a lot of, my caseload is not predominantly like typically developing kids who just have like a cute little S. It's a lot of kiddos with autism who's secondary to that diagnosis have communication issues. So, or learning disabilities, or, so they're just kind of slower thinkers and they need more time to process and they need a distraction-free zone and they don't have it. So, God, it was tough to watch a lot of them. Everybody is regressed in terms of my caseload. Maybe of the 56 students I have, I would say 30 of them, I'm going to try and do tons of makeup time when we come back, should they come back. So that's why that occurred. It wasn't for like lack of trying. And if they could have, the ones who were there with me, we could make it work. It wasn't ideal for the ones who needed like more tactile cues. I'd be like, Mom, I want you to get this Cheerio and put it right here. Can you, no, not like that. Mom, no. Okay. Now, Mom, I can't see your camera. You're muted. Can we try that again? No. And then some kids also, the Zoom has the mirror effect, right?
Yeah, so they can reverse.
Yeah. So they can see themselves. But you talk about kids who don't do well with distractions, can see themselves the whole time. Imagine putting a mirror, they're like, it's just
especially him. Yeah.
They're just playing with their faces the whole time.
I helped her learn Zoom.
Oh, yes. Oh my God. I got a huge kudos because, so prior to actually using Zoom, when I was on that, like, just trying to contact everybody phase, I was so, like, nervous. I was like, I hope we go back. I don't want to use this thing. And then I was telling Ryan about this, and he's like, oh, do you want me to show you? I use it all the time. And I'm like, use it all the time. And then he was, like, on a fucking, who cares? A 2 or 3 hour Zoom call with me, teaching me, showing me the way. It was great. He's like, this is how you share the screen. This is how you do, and this is what you recommend. And then because I'm so not internet savvy, he like even came over the house at one point because I couldn't. Something else was messed up, and you helped. So thank you.
But little do you know, when you were on the Zoom call, he was doing the mirror thing. And that's why he was just like,
yeah.
He was speaking Minion for some reason too. He's like, but yeah. So
yeah. So
don't come at me.
Don't come at. Right. Help that shit out. Only because like very quickly we made at Helio, we made the adjustment to like switching people over online, and Zoom was the best option for that one. And so I like had to learn. And we spent a shit ton of time trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
The best thing, in all fairness, is a second monitor is like the best thing you could possibly do when you're trying to do Zoom stuff. So that way you can have like a one monitor being like the one that's set up for just straight up visual, and the other one which would be all of your shit.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think
Instead
I told
of having to open close and
you did mention. I never had that. It was resources.
It's fine. Totally fine. And it's fair. But, it's a luxury to have for sure. But, yeah, when you were telling me about that, I was like, oh, shit. Like, because everyone was learning.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the world literally in a like especially in LA.
Zoom's stock skyrocketed by how many people were using it.
It had to.
Yeah.
But I mean, the world. I mean, it's like it's one of those things where it's like, where were you when? And I was like, I was at work, right? And like got the little message, and it was like, and I remember class was going on, and I like walked in to talk to one of the coaches. I was like, hey man, thing's over.
Yeah.
And like I'm like, we're in quarantine.
Shut it down.
Yeah. And he was like, he was in class, and he like finished class, and he turned the music off. He's like, all right, guys, everyone's got to leave, and the gym, they have no idea when it's going to open back up.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what? And we're like, yeah. Right. And so that was the realization that we're like, oh shit, like we got to figure this out. Cause I had a full client load. I'm like, how do I turn this around?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like that day we're like immediately researching, testing out like Google Hangouts, like Skype. We started like practicing with Zoom, and we're like, all right, Zoom's the one to go. And then it was like, let's figure out how to set it up.
Hell yeah. You got to do what you got to do. That's admirable. I thought I was going to get a vacation. I was like, you guys, because spring break was coming up. I'm like, we're going to get a break and then another break. Hell yeah. I was like texting friends. I was like, you want to go to brunch? And
yeah.
I didn't.
And they're like,
get
everything's shut down.
Yeah.
Like,
I really.
You want a Zoom brunch?
Longest 2 weeks
Oh
of
my
our
God.
lives.
Zoom. I went to a Zoom baby shower.
Oh.
And I missed a few Zoom. Yeah, I didn't like all that culture that was developed. Let's be social in this boxes that illuminate every time I'm talking. And you think we cut each other off now? Geez, Louise.
Oh.
Like that's a dynamic I don't need to perpetuate anymore.
That
should not stick.
Yeah, dude. Speaking on like talking through like Zoom is so wild. And like, there's so many people that I still work with, like that do virtual group or virtual classes, where I'm like, there's a delay. You have to wait. And because I'll be like in the middle of a conversation, and then, right. And also Zoom does that thing where it'll like mute and then like raise up the volume for another person who's speaking. And so then it just like starts cutting out because like 6 people are trying to talk. And I'm like, everybody shut the fuck up.
Like, oh, no, you go. And they're like saying you go, and you hear them say you go, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Who goes?
Jugos? Huegos?
Juice?
Juice?
Pause real quick. What time do you have to go pick up your friend?
Like 11:30 now.
Oh, okay. Not 10:30, because I was
No.
going to say like we're coming up on it. I just wanted to be sure.
No, that's fair, but we probably should start wrapping.
Okay.
But not to necessarily end it on an early note, but like I guess with all this stuff, like Becca, is there anything else kind of within like SLP that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover, or like things that you find interesting that would be just kind of worthwhile talking about?
So sweet.
Ooh, you wrote down controversial topics.
Oh no. Oh yeah, I should.
No, not do that one.
I saw those and I was like, ooh.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, what did I?
You wrote. Should I read? Oh, I'll let you read it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let
that's
her,
fair.
Let her
See, I'll let you decide if that's something you want to talk about.
I'll leave that alone for the moment. I thought of something actually. Like I think you'd be interested, given on how you responded to the hospital stuff. Within the realm of swallowing disorders, something really cool that I liked at my hospital experience that I kind of miss watching was how we would evaluate an individual's swallowing capacity. So, right, like let's say post-stroke, your muscles are, yes, there are brain infarcts, and we talked about like the language affected, but yeah, also speech can be affected, right? Because there's just weakness in general in your oral mechanism. And this translates to the larynx as well, the muscles that are required for swallowing. You know, everything kind of just comes in tightly in like a martingale fashion, right? And
wait, hold on. What's a martingale?
I'm more describing this general motion.
Gotcha.
So rather than have pressure come in only from one side, it comes in from all at the same time, right? So these muscles all work together to like push the food.
Were you gonna say bolus?
I was gonna say bolus. You knew bolus. Nerd. I'm sorry. I don't want to sound like a pretentious ass, right? Like these terms are coming out, but I don't usually talk about this unless it's work. But
they're also your terms for your scope of work.
Yeah.
So
right.
Use them.
Thanks, man. Good. You're so supportive. But yeah. So they all work together to push that down into the esophagus, and so you eat, and yay, not into the lungs. Oh, thank you. So, what can commonly happen after a stroke is that weakness leads to the bolus, the food that you chewed up and is now gross and ready to go be eaten, go in the wrong direction. And if that goes down,
aspirated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You'll aspirate your food. put it in your lungs.
Put it exactly. And we definitely don't want that. That could lead to like pneumonia or whatever. So the way to assess that is we do a modified barium swallowing study, MBSS. So what you do is you take, are you familiar with this? Is that why you're excited?
I have a client that I work with that they went through radiation that caused a atrophy of a lot of their neck muscles. So they had like throat cancer. And so they had to go through like the swallow study, right? And then they had to go through, I don't know who they worked with, but they had to do swallowing exercises.
That would be the SLP.
Yep.
Another thing. That's why I just wanted to point out how freaking huge this gamut is. And even though I'm an SLP, if somebody's like, hey, do you want to work at a hospital and do this swallowing thing? I'd be like, it's been years and that's totally unethical. I could not do it unless I got like retrained. But I really enjoyed that in grad school because that swallow study, as Eric described, you would take various textures of food. So maybe like a cracker, it's a solid. Maybe like some like pears, it's a combination of a liquid and a solid. And then maybe like a pudding, right? And you'd put like the barium in each one. So that way you could watch in real time. You had the patient set like profile view outside of the machine. And then the bolus was now like illuminated and highlighted. So in a real-time x-ray, you could see where it goes. And we would watch as LPs would be like, go, the right way. And then if it would go, we'd be watching like, if we would get like, oh, it goes into the lungs. Like, no. We're like, miss, please stop eating right now. And then we'd immediately like, and so then you'd take that opportunity to practice. Like if you know that maybe the weaknesses was only limited to one side, you can start practicing compensatory strategies already. You're like, okay, so before you swallow, I just want you to turn your neck to the right. And that provides like kind of a constriction and support for that. So it does kind of head in the right direction. And then we'd see like, okay, let's see how this works. And we just kind of sit behind the screen like, okay. And then like, oh, okay, yay. So it was always fun. We'd like be cheering this on. And I fondly remember that. So like when they would say, oh, you guys got to do a swallow study, I'd be like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
So that was that I thought you'd find funny.
Yeah, that stuff is wildly interesting. And when my client was starting to go through some of that stuff, I started doing a little bit of research into it too, because I'm just, I'm like, I want to know what's happening, as well as making sure that anything that I would be doing isn't going to have like a negative or a detrimental effect to their ability to actually swallow. So the concept, right, is such a weird thing to think about. Like, how do you teach somebody to swallow? Like it's one of those things that have become so ingrained in our habits and the way that we exist through life that it's one of those things that we take for granted.
We do it hundreds of times a day without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Right. Like often. And it's one of those, like almost like an autonomic response, similar in the sense of like when we look at like a heartbeat or blinking or breathing, it just kind of happens. And we kind of unconsciously, subconsciously. Would it be subconsciously? Subconsciously just do it.
Unconscious, you'd be asleep.
Yeah, true. You get where I'm going, right?
I get what you mean.
Right, but yeah, so it's like one of those things that it just happens.
What was the thing you were saying last week? The where you don't notice it, it's just natural. What?
Oh, that blinking and breathing.
Yeah.
Are kind of like those two things that. So when we were talking about the ghost stories, we were talking about how your brain like there's so much sensory information coming in that your brain actively has to like shut stuff out.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about, when you talk about breathing, you're not conscious of it until it gets brought up, right? Blinking, you're not conscious until it brought up. And now you're consciously breathing. Or like I even brought up like, you don't feel the clothes that are on your body.
And your nose.
Right? Or the fact that you can always see your nose, but your brain tunes it out. Right? And that's one of those things, right? Because it's always in our field of view.
Yeah.
But it's a learned trait from your brain until you want to look at it and you go, oh yeah, I can see my nose, right? But it just tunes it out.
My nose so much,
right? Right. And so when you bring some of that stuff up and you bring that level of awareness to it, then you're just kind of like, oh my God,
yeah, like
I can feel my shirt, or I can feel myself sitting on a chair, or I can feel whatever the thing that you're doing, because your brain you don't need it necessarily at the moment, and so it tunes it out. So, but like going into this, like taking for granted the idea that swallowing is one of those things that is so ingrained and so commonplace for a large majority of people, you don't realize like how important it is until you don't have the access to it. And then going backwards and like, how the fuck do you teach that?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, my long rant to say I did some research on it prior because I was like, this is something I've never had to think about.
Clearly, Ryan, lover of knowledge. Yes.
To touch on the swallowing part, whenever I used to smoke and get high, that would be the thing that I like hyper focus, because I was like, I can't swallow. Like I would get nervous and like my heart would start racing. It's like, I can't swallow. My mouth is dry. I have no saliva to swallow, but I'm like, why can't I swallow? Why can't I swallow? So I'm like super hyper focused. And then as I got better at getting stoned, I'd be like, all right, you can't swallow. Let's try some water. I drink some water. I'd be like, I can swallow.
I remember how to do it now.
I'm
He
good.
developed his own compensatory strategy.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Water.
Independent man.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't need no SLP.
You don't till you need it.
That's true. Yeah.
They don't want any of you to need it. That's it. I always feel weird when I'm like with friends or whatever, and like maybe their professions help me out in some way. I'm like, well, if you ever need anything, and especially with people with kids, they're like, we don't want to need you. I'm like, oh,
It's true.
it's true. It's fine.
That's I remember you doing that with another coach that we used to work with, and you would squeeze his cheeks together when he would talk.
Oh, someone with a lisp.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that was fun.
And I remember the one time it was all three of us talking, and just out of the fucking blue, Becca just goes up and squeezes his cheeks, and she goes, "Try it again."
We were very comfortable with each other.
Yeah, it wasn't out of the blue.
He wasn't like, what the hell? He was like, oh, I'm doing it again. I was trying to help him self-monitor.
But for the fact that you just go,
Did it-
try it.
It
again.
was so funny. And I was like, what just happened? And you're like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
we would
my
talk at
God.
length about that. That's right.
So funny.
Good times.
Just try it again.
The one thing that I wanted to come back to, and I guess it would probably be a good point to kind of like, start wrapping this up, is earlier you were talking and trying to relate it back into health and fitness, that you were talking about how generally like SLP was kind of largely founded within like the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of this like kind of weird new profession that really like has come to be. And I think because of that, because of it is being such a new thing, like a lot of people aren't fully aware of its existence to a certain degree. And I just wanted to like make kind of like a parallel note in similarly when we look at like exercise as a whole is a very new concept. Like we have exercised, but it was never structured in the way that it was today, where largely in the past we would look at sport as our form of exercise. Like people weren't generally just running, right? To a certain degree, right? Like Olympic sports, who have been around for obviously a very long time, right? Marathon.
Like 100 years.
Give or take 100 years,
Yeah.
The Olympics are only around for 100 years.
That's it. Yeah.
But the actual application of like strength and conditioning and like exercise in the way that we know it has really only developed largely over the past like 80 to 90 years, give or take, realistically. I mean, especially in the US, it's had some like wild ass changes where we used to see these like, it was largely like a group class, like aerobic was kind of the main thing, especially. Yeah. But like aerobic was kind of the big thing when we would look at it, until honestly, it was a lot of the changes that we have today and a lot of the information that we know about largely came from like the Eastern Bloc in Russia through the Cold War. And I think a lot of people don't know that, which why would they, right? There's really no reason to know that type of information. But just in the sense that like, we see exercise and it's now largely been ingrained into our society for the most part. But just the newness is such a cool concept, and like how looking at a lot of other professions that we see like through say like medicine, like the actual practice of medicine, or like engineering and all these things like have been around for centuries and have like centuries worth of practice, and to kind of see the evolution of something new in such a very recent time, largely even in the past, even in the aspects of people's lifetimes, where there's people alive that like, language wasn't a thing, or in the sense of like language, speech language practitioners, pathologists. I was like,
You get the P.
I guess it kind of works, but
Does.
still wrong. Right. But like exercise, like people are alive today that wasn't a thing that existed in their lifetimes or in the earlier stages of their lives, which is wild.
Or they'd be like, oh, you stutter, put some marbles in your mouth and all that kind of stuff.
Just like
versus the
stop
approaches
stuttering.
are difficult, are very different now. Yeah. And what's cool to think about all of that, the modification and like the exercise, especially in the CrossFit community, is it all develops out of need. The reason they're new is because it just wasn't necessary at the time. And speaking to CrossFit specifically, because I mean, that's how I got to know you both, right? But I fucking love it because it's it's not solely the exercise. The avenue with which you practice it is also the social community. All my friends do CrossFit. All my friends are strong. It's cool. So that's it makes me appreciate both realms even more because it's not just like arbitrarily there. It's there because it's important, and I just hope that more and more people find it.
So on that topic, what would be, so if somebody's listening to this and they go, I don't know, maybe they think they have something going on, or they know somebody, say like a family member that has potentially something going on, where would somebody go to try and like seek out an SLP, or to kind of just, like, I guess, figure out if that's the route that they need to take?
Good question. Because they treat all ages and stages, it kind of be depending on what you're looking for. I mean, within a hospital setting, all hospitals have SLPs on hand. So you can just say I'd like a referral or an assessment. So if you have a little kiddo even who's displaying some weird things, their speech or language is delayed, they're swallowing for eating, they're not latching on to mom, those kinds of things, there's an SLP there. So they can just request an assessment. If you have a little one in the household, ages 0 to 3, you can go to your local regional center and request an assessment from an SLP. And that's something they can give to you. And that's for anything, just from like a small speech impairment, well, not small, mild speech impairment to, I detect maybe signs of autism or something's off. If you're in the school system, all schools have, that's where I'm at with an SLP. I get referrals all the time. Can you just take a look? And there's also, so there's tons of places. There's also private practice institutions that SLPs will open up on their own. I would recommend that as the last resort because you guys pay a lot for that.
They're in the money-making business.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, there's lots of avenues. And in case anybody is listening who's, I don't know, you guys probably have a wild crowd listening and quite diverse. If anybody's interested in the field and would like to learn more, or I used to let people shadow all the time. I don't know how it'll be now, but this is definitely a field where, because it's so new and whatnot, I'm all for helping people move forward. There's so many people when I was interested in it who let me observe with them, interview them, ask all kinds of questions. So if anybody wants that, they can feel free to hit me up. I'd be more than happy to talk further.
Okay, that's awesome. And so to kind of recap that. So if it's like a student, if you're looking at a student, you can almost always look through the schools.
Exactly. Even if you're in a private school, and the public school in the area with which you reside has to give you an assessment.
Is that a nationwide type of thing? Do you know?
Oh, great question. I'm not sure. I know for California, that's the rule. But laws are different state to state.
Public and private for California? Or just public?
Just public. Some private schools I know will hire their own on, but as long as that person lives in the area, they can go to their nearest public school and get it. No problem.
Okay,
even if they go to the private instead.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be something that could be for like kids, and that's, all schools, right? Like grade school to high school, that type of thing.
Correct. And
I'm assuming college as well.
Nah, you're an adult at that point. You're on your own.
Well, maybe.
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I know that like with sorry, I'm thinking in college because I also work at a college. They have clinics on campus for the graduate students, right? And so that's where they practice and gain their experience, and they work under a licensed SLP. So some people choose, maybe they wanted a private practice route, but they can't quite afford it. They'll choose to go to a university clinic because they kind of pay on a sliding scale, but you're still getting, the assistance of a licensed clinician.
You're getting like the cheaper rate, but also under the
supervision.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't want to say guys, but also you're giving up a little bit of the like private aspect of it because you're also in like a learning situation as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so we got the schools covered. If you're kind of outside of, the school range, then there's, you can go to local centers, right? You said there's...
Oh, so a regional center would be for like children birth to 3.
Gotcha. Okay.
They if you're an adult, I've seen people go to the university, or private practice is usually the way they go by that point. It depends on what it is. I mean, I can, not to get too into it, I know an older adult male in his 50s never had a girlfriend, was having a hard time with that social language, the pragmatics, and he went to go see a girlfriend of mine in private practice, and so they worked on that. It was kind of interesting, like almost like dating coaching, almost. Yeah,
that's kind of what I was getting at earlier when we were talking about like the before we broke off into like texting about like communications.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as far as I know, should I get different information, I'll let you know. But adult and non, I think you got to go the private practice route unless you happen to know somebody.
Do you know, out of curiosity, if stuff like that is insurance an aspect of that? Like, is this considered like a medical necessity or kind of one of those non-medical things that you want to do?
Well, medical, if depending on what it is. So if it's the result of some kind of
like injury,
seizure or whatever, if you're in the hospital, you can. If you're in the hospital for whatever caused the thing, that communication disorder is now a secondary issue, yes, your insurance can cover it. For sure. But if you're just like I'm 30 and my lisp is reemerging, you've got to go
private.
Correct.
Okay. No, I was just kind of curious because like just thinking about like how can people find that? Because honestly, if someone were to ask me, I'd be like, I don't know, and I would immediately go to you. Be like, how do I find this stuff?
Great.
Other than like maybe just doing a Google search, which I imagine would probably be most people's first options.
Yeah.
But like just to like guide the search and the query a little bit, you can go like, here's some options as to where you can generally find it or find them, and then use Google to kind of help you in that regard. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well said.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, because I hear that's I just want to say kudos to you both. Sorry, God, my high pitch. Like, it's really cool that, like, during a very, very, a very social, isolating time, well, you followed through on this, like, creative endeavor you did. First of all, that's cool, because a lot of people say they want to do things, and, it just kind of falls through.
That's thanks to Eric.
Well done.
Eric pushed us into making this a reality.
Well, that's awesome, because, this has been so nice. I can only speak for myself, for me personally, because I feel like, I connect with you guys like, every once, a couple times a month or whatever. And it's just like, you guys, talking to my car.
Oh, Eric.
Yeah.
Oh, Ryan.
And that's what we love is like, that was our whole goal, was to just include everyone in the conversation, even though we can't hear you, for you to like chime in or laugh or be like, oh yeah. And like the thought process go through your head of like, oh, like I had the same idea, or, oh, that answers a question. You're part of that conversation, and that's what we wanted.
Those are the best messages that I get. Like the ones that I go, hell yeah, we're doing it right.
Yeah.
Because like Eric was just saying, like we wanted, the whole goal was to try and make it seem like you were in a room chatting with a bunch of buddies, right? And that's the goal. And so to hear like you are very vocal in responding to that stuff. Where you go like, oh, I wanted to say this when you were blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, it worked. Like it's working. That's exactly what I want it to be. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been super fun, and I'm total fangirling that I'm here. I wanted to be like, damn, I totally wanted to be like, thanks, long-time listener, first-time guest speaker. And then I forgot to do that in my opening.
Oh, no.
My bad.
Did you write? Is it because you didn't write it in your notes?
Shut up. But probably.
It didn't make it in the 36 volumes that she has in there.
You only have volume 2 here.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Well, no, it's been awesome. Like I find this stuff absolutely fascinating. And even though it's, health and fitness is kind of the general guise under what we speak on, that even though this isn't necessarily the exercise related health and fitness as we think about it, is a part of the body. And it's a thing that I think most people don't think about.
Yeah.
And so I was very excited when he brought this concept on, and I was like, hell yeah, let's go. Let's do this. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it falls into that thing you said. Is like, we don't think, subconsciously we just talk, and we're not faced with having to fight the issue if we're not facing the issue. So we don't understand, as people who talk constantly, that we don't struggle with that. So it's a fun concept to bring up and make people aware of.
Right.
Two, also being like if the last year has taught us anything, a lot of things, hopefully, but if anything, we're in a space right now within the U.S. too, where we're trying to be very aware of people, right, and aware of differences and aware of, how we interact and how we treat each other, and so, there's our voice is such a integral. Our voice and the way that we articulate ourselves to people is such an integral aspect to our personality and our person as a whole, and that is a thing that I think we have to be very cognizant of as we are going through, like, navigating this world, interacting with people, especially as we're starting to interact with people again. And again, the voice is just one of those aspects, kind of similar when we had Kyle on, she talks about how the voice is so integral to you, and that's from a singing side, but now we're also, a vocalizing side, I guess. We're also now looking at kind of more of the science of vocalizations and kind of the mouth and how we move or how we speak and whatnot. I kind of really just dumbed down your profession, so apologies. Right. But I think being cognizant of how we are interacting with people, that if they do have some sort of impairment might be the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
Just having a little bit of that heightened awareness is a good thing, right? And we can kind of hopefully garner some more patience with people if they do have a little bit of a stutter or do have a little bit of a hard time kind of articulating themselves, and then we can kind of take a beat and not necessarily prescribe any judgments or thoughts on a person not knowing anything about them.
Well said. Yeah.
So on that note, Eric, where can people find us?
You guys can find us on our Instagram at another_rep_podcast, and you can email us at anotherreppodcast@gmail.com.
And you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as you can listen to this on YouTube if you're a YouTube junkie, as I am.
Nice.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.